This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Bruchim Abam to the Koilel, Igrid de Pirka. As we proceed on our second year, right?
Third year
of dinners. We start with dinner.
I stand corrected.
As the Yom Tov of Hanukkah is approaching, Mitzvah Hashem already tomorrow night is the first night. So we want to know about the Yom Tov of Hanukkah. How exactly was it established? What is the quality? What is the eichus of this Yom Tov? We have over here the comment of the Tashbeitz in the Sefer Tashbeitz Katan, who tells us about something called suda Chanukah. Is it a mitzvah to have a suda on Chanukah? So the Tashbeitz tells us, Tashbeitz was a Talmud of the Marami Rothenburg, and we mentioned a number of times the Tashbeitz went into the prison cell of the Marami Rothenburg to learn from him something like 590 Piskei Dinim that he recorded in this Sefer. And he writes the following: B'Chanukah, the mishtois at the parties, lechal, zehu sudas harashus. This is not a sudas mitzvah. It is a discretionary meal. You want to have a party? You can have a party. You don't want to have a party? If you have a party, are you doing something good? No. Are you doing something bad? No. I mean, I can think of better things to do, and I can think of worse things to do. It's no... The whole year? Or in general?
No, that's what the suda.
Right? So says the Tashbeitz that there is no mitzvah to have a suda on Chanukah. How do I know? Kedamrinim Meseches Shabbos, Perak B'Amem Adlikin, Asoim Yamim Toivim, Lahalel Ulhaida. That how did Chazal enact the Yom Tov? They made it a Yom Tov to say Halel and to say Hoida Al Anisim. By the way, Rabbi Isai, even though if you forget Al Anisim in Moedim, you do not repeat Shemona Esrei, but let me tell you something. If you forget Al Anisim, you blew it. Because the Yom Tov was established to say Hoida in Al Anisim. So you didn't say Al Anisim, you missed the Yom Tov. You blew it. So don't forget. Okay. So, says the Tashbeitz, but it doesn't say they made a Yom Tov for Mishteh v'Simcha, and therefore there is no mitzvah whatsoever to have a Mishteh, to have a suda, to have a party on Chanukah. For Amar Maram Rothenburg says, Davka lahalal u'lahaydos, avaloi l'mishteh v'Simcha. And certainly, if you want to inaugurate a new house, if you buy a new house and you make a meal and you invite people, that certainly is a sudas harashus. If Chanukah is not a mitzvah to have a suda, certainly to inaugurate a house, there's no mitzvah to have a suda. That is the opinion of the Tashbeitz and the opinion of his Rabbi, the Marami Rothenburg.
But it says, "And simcha l'biyayin v'basar." No.
No, he doesn't say that.
No, I'm saying it says the mishteh of simcha. Simcha is biyayin basar.
Okay, but there's no mitzvah to have a suda.
How do you sameach then?
You're not. There's no mitzvah of simcha.
What do you do?
No, there is no mitzvah of simcha on Chanukah. He's saying there's no mitzvah of simcha on Chanukah, right? The mitzvah is lahaydos lahalo. There's no mitzvah of mishteh v'simcha. Okay. The simcha is Baruch Hashem. At least there's one Monday on Chanukah. You come to the Shiur. That will be your simcha. Okay. Says the Marshal, however. Shouts to Chuvas Marshal. Rav Shlomo Luria. He says, mitzvah l'smayach b'Chanukah. There is a mitzvah to have simcha on Chanukah. Umisham hachi kara Yom Tov. And that is why Chanukah is called a Yom Tov. V'hein yimei simcha. And they are days of happiness. V'chein pasuk HaRambam. That's the psak of the Rambam. V'hamordechai aruch. And there's a minhag to eat cheese based on the miracle. And says the Marshal, v'roi sha'simcha tehemu reves ublula b'simchas Torah. It is worthy that the simcha should be mixed and bolol with the joy of Torah, and v'al tevatel mikviyusam. Don't give up your regular kviyos. In other words, if you have a shiur, don't give up your shiur to go to a Chanukah party. It sort of defeats the whole purpose. If you have set sidarim, so that has to have first priority. You can't be mavatel your kviyos to go to a simcha. Okay, but basically what we have over here is machloikes achronim, whether there's a mitzvah of mishteh v'simcha on Chanukah. The Tashbeitz and the Marami Rothenburg say absolutely not. There is no mitzvah to have mishteh v'simcha on Chanukah. And the Marshal says there is a mitzvah to have mishteh v'simcha on Chanukah. Okay. Good old Machlokes Achronim. Comes along the Matei Moshe. The Matei Moshe was written by Rav Moshe Mas. He was a student of the Marshal. First he brings down the opinion of the Marami Rothenburg. Amar, look at number 3. Amar Maharam. Riboy hasuda shamarim b'Chanukah heim sudas harashus. All these parties that you see On Hanukkah, by the way, I'll tell you another important thing to know. Another important thing. You know, they have these Hanukkah parties. And then someone lights the menorah. Bad news. You're not allowed to light a menorah at a Hanukkah party. You light a menorah in your house. You light a menorah in the shul. There is no mitzvah to light a menorah at a Hanukkah party. If you do, it's very likely a bracha l'matala. Rav Ovadia has a certain kula that if you daven Mariv at the minyan, at the party, so then maybe you could say has a din of a Beis HaKnesses, and then you could light the menorah. But without that, no comment.
What if the party's in your house?
What? What do you say?
What if the party's in your house?
The party?
Is in your house?
If the party's at the time of Halakas HaMenorah, so then you could light, but you can't light again. The halacha is you only light the chiyuv of menorah is on the bias. There's no chiyuv menorah on a party. If your party is at the time of the, don't push off the time of Halakas HaMenorah because you're going to have people come to your house later to have a party. Halakas HaMenorah is a mitzvah. It's not connected, not affiliated with the party. There's a shaila whether a rabbi is allowed to be invited to light the menorah in the White House. And I know there was a very chashuv rav who turned down the opportunity because you're not allowed to light the menorah in the White House. It's not it's not your bias, and it's not a shul. So, is there any heter? Maybe if you want to make the case, Shalom Malchus, it's Pikuach Nefesh for Klal Yisrael, if you're going to turn down. By the way, they were very insulted. They were very insulted and there was a different rabbi who was only too happy to take up the opportunity to. But that's the issue. Really, la halacha, you're not allowed to light a menorah at a party.
How do you say Baruch Atah Hashem? Not you don't say Hashem's name.
So then, it's a little bit making maching chayzek of the whole mitzvah. Okay, then you're not making a bracha l'atala.
What about Shabbat brachos?
Also, you don't light menorah at Shabbat brachos. You light in your bias. You light in a shul. You don't light menorah at Shabbat brachos. Okay, so the Mati Moshe first brings down the opinion of the Maram Mei Rothenburg, and then he brings down the opinion of the Marshal. Umari HaGoinzal, my Rebbe, the Marshal, Kasav, the mitzvah l'smayach, there is a mitzvah to have simcha, misham hachi kari yamtuf, and that, therefore it's called the yamtuf, v'hem yimei simcha, v'chein pasak HaRambam. This is also the psak of the Rambam. V'hamordechai arach. V'anu, so what do we do? Who do we hold like? Do we hold like the Marami Rothenburg that it's not a sudas mitzvah? Or do we hold like the Marshal that it is a sudas mitzvah? You ready? Get a load of this. V'anu noyagim lezamer zmiros. We sing zmiros. Ushvachos. Besuda shemar behem. V'hav sudas mitzvah ledas kulam. And if you praise Hashem and you thank Hashem and you learn at the meal, then everybody agrees it's a sudas mitzvah. And in fact, the Shulchan Aruch paskins this way, right? If you look in Siman Tafrei Shayin Sif Beis, Shulchan Aruch paskins Riboy Hasuda Shemar Mehem Heim Sudas Harishos. Excuse me. Maran Bet Yosef paskins like the Marami Rothenburg. There is absolutely no mitzvah to have a suda on Purim. So all you Sfardim, don't. Sorry, you got to wait till Purim. Yeah. So according for Sfardim, there's no mitzvah to have suda on Purim. But Ashkenazim, Haga, V'yesh Oimrim, Sheyesh Ktsas mitzvah. Some say there's a little bit of a mitzvah. What's the minhag? So hopefully you Sfardim have Ashkenazic friends to invite you to a Hanukkah party, right? V'noyagin loymar zmiros v'sishmachas. The minhag is to sing the suda shemar mehem. V'oz have a sudas mitzvah, and then it's a sudas mitzvah. Explains the Mishnah Berurah. Right, the Ramah brings down. Some say, right, who are those some who say it's a ksas mitzvah? The Marshal, and he brings down the minhag is to say zmiros v'sishmachos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'oz have a sudas mitzvah ratza loymar b'tziruf zeh, with this combination. So, in other words, what's the sudas mitzvah on Hanukkah? So you take a little bit. The suda of Chanukah is a little bit of a mitzvah, and you have this miros, which is a little bit of a mitzvah, and you mix the potion together, and what do you come out with? Sudas Chanukah, that it's a mitzvah. How is it a mitzvah? A bissel Chanukah and a bissel singing, and you mix it together, and out come only Ashkenazim can pull that off, right? A little bit of the Yom Tif, and a little bit of the Divrei Torah, and you mix it together, and Beis Yosef says no, Chanukah is not. It's not a mitzvah. A mitzvah is a mitzvah, and not a mitzvah is not a mitzvah. You can't have a cholent. No, we make a cholent out of it. We take a bissel Chanukah, a bissel divrei Torah, we mix it together. So the question is, what kind of cholent is this? Is Chanukah a simcha, or is it not a simcha? If it's not, I have a question for you. If, let's say, today by lunch, we go out for lunch together, and I say a dvar Torah, is it a sudas mitzvah? No, it's not a sudas mitzvah. You could say divrei Torah, you could say that you could learn the whole shas. It's not a sudas mitzvah. Your learning is a mitzvah. The suda is a sudas rishus. Not every time you say a dvar Torah at a meal does the meal become a sudas mitzvah. Is Chanukah a sudas mitzvah or not? If it's not, then how do divrei Torah render it sudas mitzvah? And if Chanukah is, then let's say a siyam.
You make a siyam.
A siyam is a sudas mitzvah. You don't need to say divrei Torah, right? A wedding is a sudas mitzvah, whether you say divrei Torah or not. A sudas mitzvah does not require zmiros, shiuros, v'sishbachos. So either it is or it's not. What is this cholent? A little bit of Chanukah and a little bit of zmiros, shiuros, v'sishbachos, and you mix it together and out, puff, sudas mitzvah. Parshas Miketz. Every single year, Chanukah is Parshas Miketz. You can't get around it. And in fact, the Shiltei Gibarim brings down that there's a remez, or at least he says most years. He says, but look at number 7, the Shiltei Gibarim on the Mordechai brings down. Beroiv Hashanim, most years. Chanukah Chal b'Parshas Miketz. V'simanech, what's the siman? Miketz shenasayim yamin. The word shenasayim is noitrikain, simoil, ner, tadlik, yamin, mezuzah. So you say, that's the whole thing, right? Here, shenasayim stands for simoil on the left side. Ner is the candle. Tadlik, you should light. Yamin mezuzah, on the right side of the mezuzah. Yamin mezuzah, right? The mezuzah is on the right side. Then he says, Siman Kalaneros, how many candles do we light in total on Chanukah with the Shamish? 44. Siman Kalaneros, Im HaShamashim, Mem Dalid. The siman is Nechmad Lamara, it's beautiful to behold. Nechmad stands for Ner Chanukah, Mem Dalid. 44 Neros of Chanukah.
So that's a
What?
That's what it's a
Yeah. The Yeshaimrim, from the Haftarah, V'gula al Roisha. The Gula is V'gematria Mem Dalad. Okay, here's the good one. You ready? V'ani Yomtev HaKoisev, I Yomtev. That's the name of the Shiltei Gibarim. Kibalti Siman Acher. I have a tradition of a different siman. In Vayhi Miketz. Look at number 6 in the pasuk. Vayar Yosef Itam Es Binyamin. Vayomer LaAsher Al Beisai. Have Es Ho'anoshim HaBoisa. Bring the people into the house. Utivayach Tevach V'hachein. Prepare shecht, the shechting, and prepare it. Take the last ches of Tevach, put it together with V'hachein, and unscramble the letters. Ches, Nun, Vav, Chaf, Hey, says the Shiltei Gibarim, Chanukah. Haches mi Tevach, V'hateva min V'hachein, Hemoisios Chanukah. Says the Shiltei Gibarim, this is a remez, then on Chanukah, you should make a suda. Parshas Miketz, just like Yosef HaTzadik. Utavoyach Tevach V'hachein, you take the ches of Tevach, you put it together with V'hachein, it spells out Chanukah. V'smach, this is an allusion. L'sudois sha'osim l'Chanukah, to the parties that we make on Chanukah. And we make it even better, the letters Utavoyach Tevach, you add up the numerical value. Vav is 6, Tes is 9, 15, Beis is 2, 17, Ches is 8, 25, Tes is 9, 34, Beis is 2, 36, Ches is 8, 44, 44 Neros of Chanukah. You hear this? This you can't just say, this is a solid remez, right? U'tevayach Tevach V'hachein. You take the ches of Tevach, you put together with V'hachein Chanukah, and they had a suda, and U'tevayach Tevach is Mem Daled. You can't argue with that. This is a remez that the sudos of Chanukah are sudos mitzvah. Okay? So now here we have it, that there's a remez in this week's Parsha to Chanukah. Shenasayim stands for Samoil, Tadlik, Yamin, Mezuzah. And you have a Tvayach Tevach V'Hachein, which spell out the Oisiyos Chanukah, and the 44 can. Okay. Comes along the Sfas Emes, and he says an amazing thing. Parshas Miketz is a remes to Chanukah. Says the Sfas Emes, I see another Yom Tov being alluded to in this week's Parsha. Look at this. Look at number 9. Vayisa Masais Me'ez Panav. Yosef gives the brothers gifts. Aleim. V'aterev Masas Binyamin Mimases Kulam Chamesh Yados. Binyamin's gift was 5 times the value of the other brothers. Vayishtu, they drank. Vayishkaru Ima, and they got drunk. Says the Sfas Emes, even if you want to say there's a mitzvah to have a suda on Hanukkah, there's no mitzvah of chayiv inish lebesume beChanukah adula yada beinar hama lebarach monach. That there's no mitzvah. There's no mitzvah to get drunk on Hanukkah. Elamai, this is not only a remez to the suda of Hanukkah, this is a remez to another Yom Tif midrabana. Which Yom Tif is this? The Yom Tif of Purim. Says the Sfas Emes, va'amino lefi remez hamafarshim, according to the mafarshim, and we already saw it. It's in the Shiltei Giborim, and in number 8, the El Yarabba quotes it, and the Matei Moshe quotes it. Again, this is not just a little verter. This is from the words of the Rishonim, that there's a remez to Chanukah in the Oisiyos of this week's Parsha. Tevach v'Hachein, spell out Chanukah, Tvayach Tevach is Mem Dalet. Says the Sfas Emes, v'amino lefi remez hamafarshim, according to the remez of the commentaries, that Tevach v'Hachein Chanukah, af anu nemar, we will also say, vayishkaru hu merumaz al Purim. That vayishkaru is a remez to Purim. Ki Chanukah u Purim. Now, why is there a remez to Chanukah and Purim? Heim nisim ho'achronim. They are the final miracles that we're going to have smuchim l'soif tikkun hakol, before the coming of Mashiach. Sheyiyah nigmar b'mher v'yameinu, which will be completed speedily in our days. Upenimius ela hadvarim, and the inner core of these words, yuvnu l'maskel, will be understood by the intelligent person. In other words, what we have in this week's Parsha, not only a remez to Chanukah Ravoisa, we have a remez to Purim. And I ask you, what in the world is Purim doing in Parsha Shabbos Chanukah? Why are we being meramis to Purim? Wrong time of the year. We're not there yet. I know we would like to be there. Get by the summer. You stay here. Nobody has to go anywhere to warm up. We sort of skip the next 2 months, and we're ready for. Imagine if we went straight from, Gimel Teves to Yud Gimel Adar. Nobody would mind, right? We'll go straight. Maybe we'll do Tu B'Shvat. We'll get in there, right? But you have, why is there a remez to Purim in this week's Parsha?
So Rambam, the halachas of
Chanukah
Megillat are
they're together, right? They're together, right? That also shows that there is a connection between Chanukah and Purim. But you don't find any ramazim to Chanukah in Megillat Esther. You can look through Megillat Esther. There are no ramazim to the Mem Dalet Neiros, and so why do we have to be meramis to Purim in the Parsha of Shabbos Chanukah? By the way, the Gemara Megillah tells us that Yaakov Avinu gave Yosef an item that he didn't give to any of the other brothers. And what was that item? Kseines Pasim. What was the value of the Kseines Pasim? The Gemara says in Megillah, it was 2 silver sla'im. Look at number 11. The Amar Rava bar Mechasya Amar Rav Chama bar Gurya Amar Rav B'shvil mishkal shnei sla'im milas, because of something that weighed 2 sla'im of wool, shahoisef Yaakov liYosef, that Yaakov gave to Yosef, mishar achav, niskalgal hadav v'yodav v'sin Mitzrayim, because they were jealous of him, we ended up going to Mitzrayim. So the Chassam Sofer points out that what is the significance of the fact that the Kseines Pasim weighed 2 selah more? Says the Chassam Sofer that we know Yosef was ben zekunim to Yaakov. Ben zekunim, Rashi says, everything that Yaakov learned he gave to Yosef. And he didn't give the other brothers. I'm sure he learned with the other brothers. But it's mashma. The implication is there's something more that Yaakov taught to Yosef that he didn't teach the other brothers. You know what that was? Something that weighed 2 selah. 2 items. You know what the 2 items were? Says the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer identifies that the 2 items were Chanukah and Purim. That he taught the rest of the brothers all 613 mitzvahs. But he didn't teach them the 2 Yamim Tovim that were Midrabanan. The Kseines Pasim represented what we call Chanukah d'Rabbanan. You know, we say the Rabbanim, the Talmidei Chacham, they have a special cloak. The cloak of the Kseinas Pasim represented Chanukah d'Rabbanan, the two Yomim Tovim that were Midrabbanan, Hanukkah and Purim. And this is reflected in the fact that it weighed 2 more selah than any of the other brothers. And the Chassam Sofer goes on to say, when the brothers were jealous of Yosef, you know what kind of jealousy it was? Kinas Soifrim. Jealousy of the Rabbanans. They knew that Yaakov taught Yosef not only the Da'iraisas, but even the 2 Yomim Tovim that were Rabbanan, Chanukah and Purim. Says Chassam Sofer, Yosef's dreams also represented these 2 Yomim Tovim. The first dream, he saw the sheaves of wool bowing down. Yeah? Listen carefully. The Gemara Megillah says that Purim was in the Zechus that Mordechai was learning Hilchos Kamitza, the Ketziras Ha-Oimer. The Oimer, the stalks of wool, of wheat. That was Yosef's first dream. The sheaves of wool, of wheat bowing down to him. That was Chanukah. That was Purim. That was Purim. But it says Chassam Sofer, look, in the times of Purim, Akati Avdei Achashverosh Anan. We were still the servants of Achashverosh. That's why it was not a full melucha, and that's why not all the brothers were bowing down. But in the final dream, the stars, the sun, the moon, everyone was bowing down, because in the times of the Chashmonaim, it was, says Chassam Sofer, they had complete rain. It's very interesting that Yosef HaTzadik is the only person who is eligible to learn from Yaakov Avinu not only the mitzvahs d'Oraisa, but even the 2 mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, Chanukah and Purim. That was reflected in his Kseinas Pasim, that weighed 2 more selah than any of the other brothers. That was represented in his 2 dreams. Says the Chassam Sofer, one added point, that Yaakov Avinu was already paving the way for Chanukah and Purim. When did he pave the way for Purim? In the beginning of Vayishlach, he davens, Hatzileini na miyad achi miyad Esav. Says about Turim, Hatzileini begins with the letter Hey. Miyad. Excuse me. Hatzileini na nun. Miyad mem. Haman. Yaakov Avinu is davening that Hashem should spare us from Haman. Hatzileini na miyad Haman. And then after that, Vayivasar Yaakov levadoi al tikui levadoi ella lekada. He goes back for the jug, and the Chassam Sofer brings down from Tosfos that jug was connected to the jug of the oil of Chanukah. So Yaakov Avinu was already paving the way for the 2 mitzvahs Rabbanon. Hatzileini no miyad is Purim, and Vayivasar Yaakov levada is Chanukah. But you should know that for many, many years, at least 10 years, maybe longer, I was bothered with this idea that on Parshas Miketz, which is the Parsha of Shabbos Chanukah, we're merames to Purim. Why are we merames to Purim in Shabbos Chanukah? We're not merames to Chanukah in Megillat Esther. Why are we merames to Purim in Parshas Shabbos Chanukah? And yeah, I remember I even saved my piece of paper, my zettel, from I don't know who knows how many years ago. I happen to find, and I believe my father also is responsible for finding many of these. This week's Parsha, in my mind, is exactly Megillat Esther. It's mamish exactly Megillat Esther.
Nevuah stopped and Torah Shabbat came just like on Purim.
What, you mean Yaakov's Nevuah stopped?
No, Malachi's Nevuah stopped.
No, so what does that have to do with Miketz?
Well, because this time of the year, what does Hanukkah have to do with Purim?
Yeah. Okay, so Rabbi say, when I look at Parshas Miketz, I see Megillat Esther. I see Megillat Esther. So you say, yeah? Prove it to me. Okay? So I have no less than 12 comparisons between Parshas Miketz and Megillat Esther. Well, Parshas Miketz starts with the word Vayehi. And Megillat Esther starts with the word Vayehi. And you say, Rabbi, come on. That's weak. Vayehi, that's all you got. Yeah, right? Come on. That doesn't meet the Agra de Pirka standard, right? Vayehi. Well, let's take it a little further. Parshas Miketz begins, Miketz shenasayim yamim. At the end of how many years? 2 years. So what year are we in? The third year. Well, how does Megillas Esther begin? In the third year. Alright, not bad. Okay. I mean, they're not really that compelling, but okay, it's interesting.
Number 11.
Okay. Look at number 17. Yaseh Paroi v'yafked pekidim al haaretz. Let Paroi make pekidim. Now you should know, the words v'yafked pekidim only appear one other time in Tanakh. V'yafked ha'melech pekidim. And you should know, the Balaturim points this out. Look at number 18. V'yafked. Beis b'Mesorah. There are only 2 times in the Mesorah that v'yafked appears. Hacha, yasa pare v'yafked pekidim, v'idach gabe Achashverosh, v'yafked hamelech pekidim. Says the Balaturim, you should know. Achashverosh makes pekidim to gather noshim. Therefore he went downhill. But Yosef made pekidim to gather food, and therefore he became wealthy. That's the secret. One of them brings to poverty, and one of them brings to wealth. Yeah? So he said, okay, Rabbi, you have three connections. Well, let's keep on going. Looking back in 17. V'yikbitzu es kol oichel. It says v'yikbitzu. In Megillat Esther it says, v'yikbitzu es kol nara v'sula, says the Balaturim. Also in Tanakh it only says v'yikbitzu 2 times. What are they? Parshas Miketz and Megillat Esther. Look at number 19. V'yikbitzu. Beis b'Mesorah. Hacha v'yikbitzu es kol oichel. V'idach v'yikbitzu es kol nara v'sula. Oh, so now we're talking. We already have 2 expressions in the Tanakh that only appear in 2 places. The words v'yafked hamelech pekidim, Miketz, Megillat Esther, and v'yikbitzu, Miketz and Megillat Esther. Don't tell me you ever heard this before. I would be very surprised. This is okay. Yafked, and then it vayehi, and then Miketz shnasayim yom b'shnas shalosh. Okay, now we're on a roll. Look at number 20. Vayitav hadavar b'einei Paroi. Yeah? Vayitav hadavar b'einei hamelech. So now also similar expressions. It was good in the eyes of Achashverosh. It was good in the eyes of Paroi. Who are the 2 main characters in this week's Parsha other than Yosef? Yehuda and Binyamin. Yehuda is dealing, right? Yehuda and Binyamin. Well, we know Mordechai was at the same time he was Ish Yehudi from Shevet Yehuda, and he's also Ish Yemini from Shevet Binyamin. Okay. Look at number 23. Vayosar Paroi es tabatoi me'al yodoi vayitein oisa al yad Haman. No, just joking. Al yad Yosef. Al yad Yosef. You look in Megillat Esther. Vayosar hamelech es tabatoi. Who does he give it to? Asher havir me Haman. Vayitna l'Mordechai. So both places, the king removes the signet ring, he gives it to Yosef, he gives it to Mordechai.
Wow.
Good. Then, the king Paroi gives Yosef, Vayalbesh oisai bigdei sheish. Look at number 23 back. Vayalbesh oisai bigdei sheish. Vayasim ravid azav al tzavoroi. He gives him special clothing. Well, look at number 25. Vayikach Haman es halavush v'es asus vayalbesh. They both have special begadim. What do they call before Yosef? Vayagazim is a Mishnah. Vayikru lefanov Avrech. They call before him a new name, Avrech. What happens to Mordechai? Vayikru lefanov Kacha Yaselo Ish Asher Hamelech Hafez V'Karai. Now, Safnas Paneach. Yeah, Safnas Paneach. What does Safnas Paneach mean? He uncovers the secrets. Says the Balaturim. Bigamatria. Megillah Nestarim, Megala Nestarim. Very close to Megillah Esther, right? Yeah. Megala Nestarim. Safnas Paneach is the same numerical value. Megala Nestarim. Okay. How many brothers come down to Mitzrayim? Look at number 27. Vayerdu Ache Yosef. Asara. Yeah, look at number 10. 28.
I don't think they like it.
Okay, Parshas Miketz, look at number 29. Vani kasher shachalti. You can't help but think, where else in Tanakh do we have a similar expression of kasher shachalti? I only know one. B'chasher avaditi. Exact same expression. The same way Yaakov Avinu says, just like I went lost from Yosef, I'm going to go lost from Binyamin. So Esther Hamalka says, the same way I went lost from my parents, I'll go lost from you. B'chasher avaditi. That's pretty compelling. But we're not finished. There is another word that only appears in 2 places in Tanakh. Vayirchatz panav vayetze vayisapak. How could you not realize the word vayisapak? I mean, who doesn't know where else? Vayisapak, come on. Right? Vayisapak, come on. Says the Balaturim. Vayisapak. Beis b'mesoires. There are only 2 places. Here, and vayisapak, come on. Just like, says the Balaturim, in the beginning it was tsar for Yosef, and in the end it was simcha. So too by Megillat Esther. In the beginning it was tsar, and in the end it was like Yehudim, Haisa, Ira. Now, if you want to say that in Parshas Tetzaveh or Truma, it's mamish like Megillat Esther. That's the Parsha we lay in right before Purim. So you have all these remazim to Megillat Esther. That would make half sense. But why in the world, Shabbos, Chanukah, are we laying a Parsha that if your mind is open and you're actually conscious and your heart is beating, all you see is Megillat Esther? Why Shabbos, Chanukah? First the Sfas Emes says, Vayishkaru is Chayav Inish L'Basume V'Pori Ad L'Yad V'Nar Haman. And then all these remazim, I mean, how could you ignore it? Right? Let's go. Vayehi. Miketz nasayim yomim b'shna shalosh l'malchai. Vayasar paras tabatoi. Vayasar hamelech es tabatoi. Vayisapak. V'yafged pekidim. V'yafged hamelech pekidim. V'yikvetzu es kol oichel. V'yikvetzu es kol naro v'sula. V'yitav hadar b'nei paroi. V'yitav hadar b'nei hamelech. V'chasher shalcholti. Kasher avadati. Ish Yehudi. Ish Yemini. Yehuda and Binyamin. I have another one. I have a couple more. You ready? Now this is not actually from Parshas Mikeitz, but in Parshas Vayeshev, we find that Eshes Potiphera tempted Yosef frequently. How frequently? Vayehi, right? Kedabra el Yosef, Yom, every day. Well, we find in Megillat Esther that Haman teased Mordechai. Vayehi ki Amram elav yom vayim, says the Medrash in Bereshis Rabbah. There were 2 descendants of Rachel. Their Nisayon was equal, and their Gedula was equal. Their names were Yosef and Mordechai. Yosef was tempted yom. Mordechai was tempted yom. Yosef v'lo shama eleha, Mordechai v'lo shama alehem. Their Gedula was equal. Mordechai vayasar parayas tabatoi, and Yosef vayasar hamelech tabatoi. Vayitenois al yad Yosef vayitno la Mordechai. Vayal v'Yosef bigdei sheish v'Yosef v'nasa in halevush. Right, the hasos. Revidas vayarkev v'merkavas Mishnah. So Rabbi say haloi davaru. You think it's just coincidence that almost every unique expression found in this week's Parsha is only found in one other place in the whole Tanakh? Megillat Esther, Yom v'Yom, as Tabatoi, Vayisafak, Vayafke, Pekidim, Miketz, called Naro, Besula, Shachalti. I mean, come on. So you say, but Rabbi, everybody knows that Hakol Hoylech Achar Hachosam. You have to look at the end. The ending, right? You could give a lousy shiur, but if you end off good, then it's people. That's what they remember. Is the ending similar? I maintain the ending is exactly the same. How does Parshas Miketz end? Look at number 37. V'atem alu l'shalom el avichem. Go up in peace to who? Your father. Peace to your father. And And how does Megillat Esther end? Doiresh toiv li amoi v'doiver shalom l'chol zaroi shalom l'zaroi. Peace to your children. This week's Parsha ends Shalom el avichem. Megillat Esther ends Shalom l'zaroi. This is what we call good old Masei Avos Siman Labana. Parshas Miketz ends Shalom el avichem. This week's Parsha ends Shalom l'zaroi. Could somebody please tell me why in the world we lane Megillat Esther on Shabbos Chanukah? Maybe Shalom Megillat Antiochus, but Parshas Miketz Megillat. And then I'll add another thing. You know, when you light the neiros, you sing a song, and in the song, there's a whole part about the miracle of Purim. Kirois kaimas biroish, right? Bigesh Agagi ben who's Agagi ben Hamadasa? Haman. He became trapped. His arrogance was his downfall. Roish Yaminini say. So you lifted up the person, the great person from Binyamin. The Oyev and the enemy Haman Shmoi Machi. So you wiped out his name. Roiv Banav, his many children. The Kinyanav and his possessions. Him and his iPhone. Al Ha'etz Talisa, you hung on the tree. Why are we singing about Haman on Chanukah? You ever see after Megillah? You ever hear anyone sing Ma'is Tzur after the Megillah? All of a sudden, right? Then the guys, you think he's drunk even before he started drinking. Why are you laning about? Why are you reading? You don't say a word. The entire Purim goes by. You don't say one word about Chanukah. And on Chanukah, there's all you got on Chanukah in Parshas Miketz is utvayach tevach v'hachen. I mean, come on, that's it. All you have is the ches of tevach and v'hachen, Chanukah and Mem Dalet. But the rest of Parshas Miketz is Megillat Esther. The whole thing is Purim. It's mamish v'nahapoichu. What? Yeah, it's mamish v'nahapoichu. The whole Parshas Miketz is Megillat Esther. So we would like to suggest the following. Every person has two ways, two pipes, two pipelines. The names of these two pipes are the kaneh, the windpipe, and the veshet, the food pipe. These are our two pipelines. The kaneh is a very important way of coming close to Hashem. That's how you daven. That's how you learn. That's how we do most of our mitzvahs, with our windpipe. The veshet, that's also an important way to come close to Hashem. You eat l'shem shamayim, you eat sudas mitzvah. But certainly we can't argue that of the two pipes and the two ways we come close to Hashem, the kaneh is certainly the more direct way, is the pipe that Klal Yisrael focuses on. And as the pasuk says, HaKoil, Koil, Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu, Klal Yisrael, they focus on the kaneh, the windpipe. Esav, on the other hand, Esav is very into his food pipe, his veshet. In fact, what I'm about to say now, basically the next couple of minutes are the thoughts of the Shlach HaKadosh in the Shar HaOisiyos in number 40. And the Shlach HaKadosh tells us, Esav, we know, is very into his food pipe. First of all, he says, Haliteni na min. Pour down. Esav says, just pour it down the veshet. By the way, Esav's not the only guy into the veshet, because Haliteni na min is Rashi Tevos. Hey, nun mem. Haman. Haman's also very into the veshet. He's the one who advised Achashverosh to make the suda. In fact, why did Esav give up the bechayra? Because he liked food. And the pasuk says, Vayivez Esav es ha-bechayra. You look at Targum Unklas, and the Shla brings this down. And this way you don't have to even believe me, you can see it for yourself. The Shla on page 4, on Ois Reish Lamed Al, the top left paragraph, on the words, Vayivez Esav es ha-bechayra, Targum Unklas says, Vishat Esav yas buchra. Esav despised, Vishat. Ugh. But the letters Vishat could be read Veshet. Because Esav grabs a hold of his Veshet. Esav is very into his food pipe. Esav is a big proponent of food. If Esav would run for president, his platform would be his food pipe. That is the hallmark, that is the trademark of Esav. The trademark of Yaakov is his kaneh, is his windpipe. HaKoil, Koil, Yaakov. Says the Shla HaKadosh, a davar oyoim v'noira. How do you spell Veshet? Vav, Shin, Tes. Vav, Shin, Tes. Well, you got to be very careful to make sure the Vav stays at the beginning of the word. Why? Because if you act a little foolish and you get carried away with your food pipe, you could start rearranging the letters and it could become Shin, Tes, Vav. Like the pasuk says, look on page 4, the second paragraph from the top on the right hand side. Shatu ha'am v'laktu. When Klal Yisrael gets carried away with their food pipe, the Vav, Shin, Tes, turns into Shin, Tes, Vav. Shatu. They scattered. But we know, when you see Shin, Tes, Vav, you think of a shaita. And that's what a shaita is. A shaita. A fool. Yeah, a fool. You may know some. A fool. Shin, Tes, Vav. Shatu. Not over here. Chas v'shalom. Shin, Tes, Vav. That when you get carried away with your windpipe, that's a sign of shtuyot. That's a sign of foolishness. The Vav, Shin, Tes becomes Shin, Tes, Vav. That's why it says in Mishlei, in Koheles, Chacham Einav Berosho. A Chacham makes sure he has eyes, Berosh Vav. He wants the Vav to be Berosh. A Chacham makes sure, Chacham Einav Berosho, Rosh Vav. He makes sure the Vav stays in the beginning of the word. Because if you become not a Chacham, what's the opposite of a Chacham? A Shaita. Then the Vav goes to the end of the word, then you become a Shaita. But the Shaita is in very big danger. Because now, the fool, who has taken the Vav from the beginning of the Veshet and putting it at the end of the word, that Vav, you see, the Vav represents the food pipe. And if you ever took an MRI or a sonogram of the food pipe, it actually, when you're not eating, it shrinks up.
Shrinks up, you're right.
Shrinks up. But as you eat, it expands. And when a Vav expands, what happens to a Vav that expands? It turns into the final Nun. And then you have Shin, Tes, Nun, Satan. That's where the Satan comes from. Says the Shla HaKadosh. You know where the Satan comes from? Satan starts off like this. He says, yeah, you're going to the chasana. You know, it's a time to eat a little bit more. It's a suda mitzvah. So just eat a little bit more. But it's not healthy. A little foolishness never hurt anybody, right? So now the Vav, which is supposed to be in the beginning of the word, now gets transposed to the end of the word. Now the Satan says, I got this guy. Then he says, once you have the Vav at the end of the word, then I get you to speak Lashon Hara and this and that. And the Vav expands the Satan. That's why throughout the whole Torah, whenever you see the Satan, he's always brought about through food. Starting with the Eitz Hadas. When the Eitz Hadas, where did the Satan come from? The Achila of the Eitz Hadas. The Achila of the Eitz Hadas, the first step is the Vav goes to the end, Shtus, and then the Vav expands and becomes Satan. Where else do we have? Haman min ha-Torah minayin, Hamin ha'etz. Haman says to himself, let me analyze, how do I get the Satan to attack Klal Yisrael? The same way when they indulged Be'achila, then the Veshet became Shatu, became Satan. So too, says Haman, I'm going to do the same thing with Suda Achashverosh. The Veshet will become Shatu, will become Satan. Now let's take a look at the windpipe. The windpipe is a kaneh. If you ever took an MRI or a sonogram of the kaneh, there are rings around the kaneh. How many rings around the kaneh? Exactly, there are 6 rings around the kaneh. And the Shla offers 2 explanations why there are 6 rings around the kaneh. One is, there's a pasuk in Yeshaya, V'nacha alav ruach Hashem, ruach chachma uvina, so chachma, bina, eitza, gvura, das, v'yiras Hashem. Another pshat is there are 6 kinds of inyane musar. You have to be careful while you're eating. I once heard from Rabbi Isaac Obam, Shlita, that the 6 rings around the kaneh represent the 6 things you got to do with your kaneh. And I also saw this in a sefer of Likutei Ma'amarim. What are the 6 things you have to do with the kaneh? It's called Zroim, Mayed, Nashim, Nazikim, Kachim, V'taros. Torah Shabbat, you got to learn. That's the purpose of the kaneh. You got to learn the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. That's why you have 6 rings around the kaneh. That's the purpose of the kaneh. Says the Shla Kadosh, the windpipe is the food pipe is a vav. The windpipe is a yud. It's a yud. Says the Shla Kadosh, there's always this constant battle in life. Which pipe will you give more attention to? What's your main pipe? Right? Ask somebody, what's your main pipeline? So you see a guy by lunch, and he has this huge thing of food in front of him. You don't even have to ask him what his main pipe is, right? You could tell by the way a person conducts himself by a suda what the main pipe is. Is it the windpipe or is it the food pipe? The goal in life is for the windpipe to influence the food pipe. In other words, that while you're eating, you eat l'shem shamayim, you eat. It says the Shla, there are 2 ways of eating. You could eat l'toyeles, and you could eat for hana. A person who eats l'toyeles, he eats what gives him strength, what gives him health, what gives him kayach, what gives him chizuk. Someone who eats for hana eats what kills him, but right now for one moment it gives him momentary pleasure. So the goal in life is for the windpipe to influence the food pipe and not vice versa. So you have these 2 pipes. The food pipe is a vav, the windpipe is a yud, the Shla says. If the food pipe influences the windpipe, the vav brings the yud over to its side, and the Mekubalim tell us, how do you make a nun? It's a vav with a yud on top. If the food pipe influences the windpipe, you bring the satan. That's where the satan comes from. Says the Shah HaKadosh, you look on page 5, the end of number 40, right before 41. He brings down from the Sefer HaPardes in the Shar HaOsios that the tzura of a final nun is a vav with a yud on top. So if the food pipe is a vav and the windpipe is a yud, if the food pipe influences the windpipe, you bring the satan. However, and you know what else you bring? You bring tragedy. Because you have kaneh, you have the windpipe. If the yud is then removed, the yud then becomes part of the word kaneh, and kina mibayle. You have tragedy. Kina mibayle. Okay. Says the Shla HaKadosh, there are 5 times in Tanakh that the word Yaakov is spelled male with a vav. The vav represents the 6 rings of the kaneh. Okay? Yaakov is spelled male with a vav 5 times. You know why? What's 5 times 6? 30. What ois in the Torah is 30? Lamed. What does Lamed stand for? Limud. The purpose of the kaneh, says the Shla, is for limud. Okay? This is what the Shla HaKadosh tells us. That the purpose of life, the goal in life, the struggle in life is between these 2 pipes. The food pipe and the windpipe. What do you give your attention to? What's more important to you? Who influences who? If the windpipe influences the food pipe, then it remains a veshet. It remains small. It remains uninfluential. But when you get really into the food pipe, then the food pipe, instead of becoming veshet, becomes shatu, fool, and then it becomes satan. That's the big struggle in life. That's what we all struggle with, right? What's our main pipe? What's our primary pipe? The windpipe or the food pipe? Amazingly, the Bnei Yissaschar tells us in his Maimer on Kislev, Maimer down number 41, that we have 2 Yomim Tovim. Each Yom Tif represents a different pipe. Chanukah and Purim. What pipe do you think represents Chanukah? The windpipe. The kaneh. Why? Because what's the purpose of Chanukah? L'haydais u'l'halal. To thank Hashem, to sing to Hashem, to learn Torah. That is the windpipe. That's the windpipe of Klal Yisrael. What's the food pipe of Klal Yisrael? What Yom Tif is the food pipe? Purim. Purim is Mishteh V'Simcha. That's how we connect to Hashem be'achila. That's how we connect to Hashem with ruch, with gashmias, with physical achila. So we have these two Yomim Tovim. I ask you for a moment, which Yom Tif should influence which Yom Tif? Should the windpipe, Chanukah, influence Purim, which is a food pipe, or should the food pipe, Purim, influence the windpipe, Chanukah? In other words, which Yom Tif should schlep over which Yom Tif? We would think the goal in life is we don't want the Veshet to become Shatu, to become Satan. We want the windpipe to influence the food pipe. We want Chanukah to influence Purim. By the way, you should know, the same way a Jew has two ways of coming close to Hashem, through his food pipe and his windpipe. Well, we know God, so to speak, is our head. He's our Rosh. And we are the Guf. Right? Like the pasuk says, Kisisa es Rosh, ve'ein Rosh ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shenemar vayavar malkam lefneihem v'Hashem b'Rosha. So if God is our head, and we're the body, what are the two ways we connect with Rebbeinu Shalom? Well, the Beis Hamikdash was called the Tzavar, the neck of Klal Yisrael, right? Tzavarech, kemigdal Hashem, kemigdal David Tzavarech. And in the Beis Hamikdash, there were two kelim that represented the two pipes. What were they? You had the menorah in the Daraim, and you had the shulchan in the tzafay. The menorah, by the way, if you look in Parshas Emor is the Parsha of the Yom Tovim. It talks about Pesach. It talks about Shavuos. It talks about Rosh Hashanah. It talks about Yom Kippur. It talks about Sukkot. But obviously it's not going to talk about Hanukkah and Purim, because Hanukkah and Purim are midrabanan. But, says the Roikeach, right after Sukkot, juxtaposed to Sukkot, it says, V'yikchu eilecha shemen zayizach. Which Yom Tif do you think is Merumaz and V'yikchu eilecha shemen zayizach? Chanukah. And the Roikeach says, the fact that it puts V'yikchu eilecha shemen zayizach right after Sukkot tells us that just like Sukkot is 8 days and we say complete Hallel for 8 days, so too Chanukah is 8 days and we say Hallel Shalom for 8 days. Okay. Right after V'yikchu eilecha shemen zayizach, it says, V'lakachta soiles, you should take flour, V'afisa. Which keli of the Beis Hamikdash does that refer to? The shulchan. So we have two Yomim Tovim alluded to in Parshas Emor, Chanukah and Purim. Chanukah is alluded to in which keli of the Beis Hamikdash? The menorah. That's the windpipe. Purim is alluded to in which keli of the Beis Hamikdash? The shulchan. That's the food pipe. Okay? So we have these two kelim in the Beis. By the way, if you know, the Gemara says in Masechta Yuma that you had the menorah in the south and you had the shulchan in the north, and they faced each other. What do you mean they faced each other? Wasn't the mizbeach in between? No. The Gemara says the mizbeach had to be a little bit off to the side so that the menorah and the shulchan could be looking at each other. The Gemara uses a lashon, they have to see each other. Take a look at number 43. It brings down over there, the Sefer Likutei Ma'amar brings down. The shulchan is in the north, away from the wall 2.5 amos. The menorah is in the south, away from the wall 2.5 amos. And the mizbeach is in the middle, but it's moshach klapei chutz. Why? Because v'es ha-menorah noichach ha-shulchan, you need that they see each other. You need that the menorah sees the shulchan. Why does the menorah have to see the shulchan? Because when you eat, you must be influenced by the menorah. When a person has achila, when a person uses the food pipe, you must be influenced by the windpipe. When you sit down to eat, there must be an achila with the recognition that I'm not just using my food pipe, but I also have to learn, or to speak to Torah, or sing Zmira Shiras V'Tishbachos. That is why the menorah and the shulchan faced each other. And then we have these two Yomim Tovim, Chanukah and Purim, that certainly are facing each other. They are the only two Yomim Tovim that are midrabanan. There's nothing interfering in the calendar between Chanukah and Purim. They are represented by the Ksainas Pasim of Yosef that weighed 2 sla'im more than the other brothers. Chanukah and Purim. So I ask you, which Yom Tif needs to influence which? Should on Purim we be singing about Chanukah? Should on Purim we be laning a Megillah that's Meramis to Chanukah? No. We don't want Purim. We don't want the food pipe to be influencing the windpipe. Just the opposite, lehepach. On the Yom Tif of Chanukah, which is the Yom Tif of L'Hoidei Sula Halel, that's the Yom Tif that we focus on the windpipe, the kaneh. That's the Yom Tif that we want to schlep Purim over to, that we want to influence the food pipe. And therefore, on Shabbos Chanukah, we read a Parsha that if you are alive and breathing, you cannot help but think it's Megillat Esther. Vayehi, doiver shom l'chol zaroi, alu l'shalom el avichem, vayis'apak, v'yikbetzu es kol nara besula, v'yikbetzu es kol oichel, v'yavged amelech pekidim, vayishkaru. You have Sudas Purim in this week's Parsha. Why? Because this is the limud. The limud of Chanukah is that the main avenue in life is your kaneh, your windpipe, and the windpipe must influence the food pipe. So therefore we like to suggest the following. The rest of the year, either it is a Sudas mitzvah, or it's not a Sudas mitzvah. On a wedding, it's a Sudas mitzvah, you don't need to speak Divrei Torah. It's a nice thing, it's better than the alternative. On a siyum is a Sudas mitzvah. A Yom Tif is a Sudas mitzvah. Is Chanukah a Sudas mitzvah? It has to be made a Sudas mitzvah through Divrei Torah. Why? The whole purpose of Chanukah is for the windpipe to be influencing the achila, for the windpipe to be influencing the food pipe. And therefore, on Chanukah, we've carved out a special type of Sudas mitzvah that we don't find any other time of the year. Where is Chanukah Sudas mitzvah? No. Does Divrei Torah make a Sudas mitzvah in general? No. But Chanukah, the whole avodah of Chanukah, is that the windpipe influenced the food pipe. And therefore we've carved out a new type of Sudas Mitzvah, which is reserved only for Chanukah. It's the Sudas Mitzvah of Utevoyach Tevach V'Hachem. It's a Sudas Mitzvah where Al Yedei, Divrei Torah, and Zmiros, Shiur, V'Sishbachos, that creates a Sudas Mitzvah. That may be why the Ramah tells us that, and the Mishnah Berurah says, there's a tziruf of Chanukah, a special type of Sudas Mitzvah on Chanukah that we don't find anywhere else. And this is the remez. This is what the meaning of the Ramazim are. Vayishkaru imai. Why on Parshas Chanukah, Parshas Miketz, you have all the Ramazim to Purim? It's the idea of schlepping Purim, schlepping the windpipe to the food pipe, that the food pipe is influenced. But the other way around, the other way is going to get you into big trouble. But this way, the windpipe, it remains a kaneh and not a kina. And the food pipe remains a veshet. And hachacham einav beroish vav. Someone who's smart takes the vav, takes the shishe sidrei mishnah, keeps it at the forefront of his achila, and then both of the pipes live together. Shalom l'chol zaroi, v'shalom el avichem. I wish you all a freilichem Chanukah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.